There were very few people in history who became as rich as Andrew Carnegie. He was a complex man, but also very rich. When he sold his company, he had a lot of money, so much that it was 2% of all the money America had at that time. In this video, we'll learn how a man from Scotland who only went to school for 5 years went from being poor to the richest man in the world. Carnegie became the richest American ever for a time, but he wasn't even born in America. His story started in Dunfermline, Scotland, across the Atlantic Ocean. He grew up in very poor conditions. His mother worked constantly sewing shoes, while his father made cloth and weaved on looms. But when new steam-powered looms came into use, his father's business suffered and he couldn't find work. This was a difficult time for Carnegie, as he saw his father struggling to make a living, and it had a big impact on him. In 1848, Carnegie and his family left Scotland to find a better life in America. They sold everything they had and borrowed money to make the journey. They arrived in Pittsburgh, a place known for manufacturing, but even in this land of opportunity, they faced many challenges. Both his father and mother had a hard time finding work, which forced Andrew to drop out of school and work to support the family. They had to start from scratch and work hard to make a new life in their new country. Finally, Carnegie got a job as a messenger boy at a local telegraph office. He rode his bike all over Pittsburgh, delivering telegrams and memorizing the faces of the people he delivered to. This helped him become familiar with the city's business community. At 17, he became very skilled at hearing Morse code and could recite messages without writing them down. Thomas Scott, a regional manager for the Pennsylvania Railroad Company, was impressed and hired Carnegie as his personal telegrapher and private secretary for $35. This was a big opportunity for Carnegie to work for an important person and make more money. Carnegie was really business savvy and saw the Pennsylvania Railroad Company as an amazing opportunity. It was the biggest corporation in the world at the time. He got to see firsthand how to run a successful business and learn from the best. His boss, Tom Scott, was like a second father to him and recognized his potential. Thanks to Tom's advice, Carnegie invested in stocks and experienced capitalism for the first time. During the American Civil War, Carnegie was drafted into the Union Army, but instead of fighting, he found a way to profit from it. He paid $850 for a substitute to take his place on the battlefield and stayed safe. While observing the war, he realized that the wooden bridges were easily burned down and that there was a need for iron bridges to replace them. This inspired him to start the Keystone Bridge Company, which was successful. But his biggest move was yet to come, and it would define him as an astute businessman. Keystone was more than just a bridge-building company. They also owned their own iron mills, which provided the iron needed for the bridges they constructed. This meant that Carnegie's company didn't have to rely on other companies for their iron supply, making them more independent and profitable. After the bridges were built, Carnegie used his connections in the railroad industry to make even more money. Essentially, he had 3 companies working together: a mining company that extracted iron, a bridge-building company that used the iron from the mining company, and a railroad company that profited from the bridges. Andrew wanted to find more success in New York City, a place he thought was full of busy and successful people. But when he got there, he didn't find what he was looking for. He decided to make a promise to himself that he would retire in 2 years and work on making the world a better place. Unfortunately, he was not able to keep that promise. In 1856, a new invention called the Bessemer converter changed everything. It allowed for the mass production of steel, which was previously impossible. This breakthrough made it feasible to build large structures from steel, including the first skyscrapers. Carnegie saw the potential and quickly built America's first steel plants. He hired the best engineers and architects and pushed his employees to work as efficiently as possible. He was even known to make them work 364 days a year, only allowing for rest on the 4th of July. He sought to replace workers with machines wherever possible, as machines didn't need breaks or ask for raises. Carnegie and Frick. Carnegie named his new steel venture after one of his customers, J. Edgar Thomson, to show his appreciation for their business. This strategy worked, and he received a large order from Thomson. Naming a mill after a customer was not just a sales trick, but a part of a larger strategy of showing appreciation. This strategy continued to pay dividends throughout Carnegie's career. To help run Carnegie's steel mills, he hired a man named Henry Clay Frick. Frick was known for his ruthlessness and attention to the bottom line. Together, Carnegie and Frick were a powerful force. However, their ruthlessness was evident in a story about them. Carnegie wanted to take over Duquesne Works, one of his competitors. To achieve this, he and his business partner, Frick, spread false rumors about Duquesne steel being defective. They scared off Duquesne's customers and undercut their prices, causing them to go out of business. Eventually, Carnegie bought Duquesne at a bargain price. However, their ruthless behavior had consequences. At their largest steel plant in Homestead, Pennsylvania, they had invested millions to increase efficiency, but they still needed to lower labor costs to maximize profits. This led to a conflict with the workers, resulting in a violent strike and a tragic loss of life. Carnegie and Frick learned the hard way that their business tactics had a high cost. Carnegie had a problem. He wanted to be seen as a champion of workers' rights, but he didn't want to risk his reputation by executing a plan to cut wages for 10,000 already frustrated low-paid workers. Instead, he had his right-hand man, Henry Frick, do the dirty work while he traveled to his home country of Scotland to distance himself from the situation. In 1892, tensions between workers and mill owners were especially high due to an ever-widening wealth gap. The richest people in America were accumulating fortune faster than ever before, while workers felt like they were just property of the rich. Workers felt like their voices were being silenced, and the only way they could be heard was through a union. This situation was made even worse when the wages of the workers were cut. Frick, who followed Carnegie's orders, wanted the workers at the factory to work longer hours without getting more money. They were already working hard, but now they would have to work even harder for less money. The workers also wanted safer working conditions because many workers in the steel industry were dying on the job. Frick refused their demands and locked out all the workers. He brought in other workers from another country who would work for less money. To protect these new workers, Frick hired a group of armed men called the Pinkertons. When the Pinkertons arrived at the factory, the workers were waiting for them. A fight broke out, and it is unclear who fired the first shot. This event became known as the Homestead Massacre. At the end of the fight, 9 factory workers and 7 Pinkertons were dead and hundreds were injured. The governor ordered 8,000 troops to come in and help. The factory reopened, but the workers were paid less, worked longer hours, and the safety conditions remained the same. Carnegie's reputation was also damaged. Even though he talked about wanting better conditions and pay for workers, he did the opposite and cut their pay while doing little to make the factories safer. Many people thought he was a coward for using Frick to do his dirty work. Despite the bad blood, the steel mills continued to thrive, and by 1900 produced more steel than Great Britain. But in 1901, Carnegie was done and wanted to spend time with his family. As Carnegie got older, another businessman named J.P. Morgan started to become a big player in the steel industry. Carnegie, who was now almost 70 years old, decided he was open to the idea of selling the company he had spent his whole life building. He wrote down on a piece of paper how much he would be willing to sell it for, and his company's president, Charles Schwab, took the offer to Morgan. The story goes that Morgan quickly agreed to the offer without even hesitating and bought Carnegie Steel Company for $480 million. This made Carnegie the richest person in the world at that time. Andrew Carnegie decided to leave behind his business life and focus all of his energy on helping the world through philanthropy. He had a special place in his heart for libraries, which he believed helped him achieve financial success despite only having 5 years of schooling. He donated over 2,500 libraries to cities around the world, and even built Carnegie Hall, one of New York's most famous landmarks, as a music hall. Although he was known for employing abusive labor practices and being hypocritical, his philanthropic impact was immense. He donated his vast wealth to various causes, and his name is only displayed on a few of the libraries he donated. It's perplexing how a man who committed business sins could become a saint through his philanthropy, but perhaps he saw it as a way to atone for his past actions. Carnegie believed that making money was great, but giving it away was even better.